So welcome everybody to our Mental Health Awareness Week. My name is Alicia McPeak, and we're just here sharing our stories and our struggles with you in the hopes that we can give you some hope and find answers to address some very complex, but much more common than you probably realize issues. Today, our issue that we're going to discuss is suicide. This is hard to talk about. It's hard to make sense of. It's scary. And it leaves the families with so many unanswered questions. Here's some facts. 1 in 4 young adults have struggled with suicidal thoughts since coronavirus. 60% increase has happened in people reaching out to crisis text line on suicide hotline. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, second among ages 15 to 24. Depression has tripled in the last year. And I was just telling Kimberly, I heard a statistic just the other day that men have had an increase in depression 60%. And then she told me that that men are more likely to commit suicide than women. So it's more common. This topic is more timely than you could ever possibly imagine. Over the past year, feelings of uncertainty, sleep disturbances, and anxiety, distress, and depression have definitely gone up. What should we be doing? What should we be looking for? And how do you make any meaning of a loved one's death by suicide? And how do you even begin to move forward? Well, one brave and strong sister is going to share with you how she and her family were caught off guard with the suicide of her brother and began to pick up these pieces and deal with their own struggles and their own mental health issues. This sounds like a conversation you'd like to be a part of or hear more about. Please, if you're here on my YouTube channel, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of these upcoming conversations. And if you're here live on Facebook, I know that Kimberly would really love some love. So drop us some red hearts below. Let us know you're here listening in. And if you're on the replay, put in the comments #replay so we know you stopped by. All right, so I'm so happy to bring you today my friend Kimberly MacRae of MacRae Naturals. Now, MacRae Naturals is a line of beautiful and purposeful wellness jewelry. That's actually how I first met Kimberly. But today, Kimberly is here to share her earth-shattering story of coping after the loss of her brother. So Kimberly, why don't you just tell everybody just a little bit about you as we get started here?
So I am 32. My birthday is, well, almost. My birthday is Monday. I am a mom of 3 boys, 7, 5, and 3. I'm married to my awesome husband, Cody, for 10 years. And I am the owner of MacRae Naturals for 7 years. So that's a little bit of my backstory and who I am.
Okay, so I touched base with you not too long ago. We were just talking about business type stuff, and you shared a really impactful story with me. And I've had people in my life who definitely have died by suicide. I've struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life and everything that comes with that. And I just think that us being able to be really real and share with people our truth so that they know that they're not alone, and that sometimes you need somebody just to be able to hear you so that you can begin to pick up the pieces and move on. So I'm hoping that we can be that to people today. So thank you so much for being brave and vulnerable to share this story. Absolutely. I happen to know that it's your brother's birthday, so this makes this even more challenging today. So, but also timely. So I'm just going to let you lead the way. Just share the story.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize if I get, already emotional. I'm going to share a picture of my brother first. This is us on my wedding day. And I am emotional today because it is his birthday. He would have been 35. Sometimes I'm emotional, sometimes I'm not, and I can get through it. So I'm just going to breathe.
It's okay. We're right here with you.
Thank you. My brother's name is Steven, and he silently struggled with depression, suicidal thoughts, which we had no clue about, anxiety, paranoia, things like that. And he took his life on May 11th, 2019. So it's almost been 2 years. Obviously, it's still a huge thing that I'm having to get through. I'm in counseling, I'm on medication. It was shocking. So he had just lost his job, and he was living at my parents' house. 33, no job, didn't want to get a job. I think it had to do with him being depressed and just, he had social anxiety as well. So he did have substance abuse issues in the past. He struggled since he was 15. And what happened was he moved to Miami on the 8th. It was a couple days before he took his life. And we don't know why he went to Miami. He loved Miami. He had been there before, lived there, and then came back, but he really loved Miami. So he went there. It was a few days that he stayed in a hotel, and I believe it was a Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. And we don't know the backstory of it. I don't know what triggered him, but he ended up going on the roof of a 20-story hotel and took his life with a gunshot wound to his forehead. And sorry, it's just been really hard as a sister for my parents, just trying to figure out and putting the pieces back. Why did this happen? What triggered him? What kind of struggles was he going through? Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he let us know that he was suffering, that he needed help, that he was suicidal? The only reason why I know that he was suicidal is because after he passed away, we went in his room and I found some journals of his from maybe a year or two before he passed, just saying, like, he would write contracts to himself as like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to be married. I'm going to have this many kids, just basically like visualization and things like that. So you can tell he really tried to fight his demons. And I found a journal, and on one page, it was like, I feel like something evil is trying to get me to commit suicide, but I'm going to fight it off. I'm not going to do it. So that was a couple years before. So we clearly knew from that he had been struggling for a while. He's the type of person that if he was in any pain, he would never tell you. He could have been going through the worst things and he was silent. He'd act like everything's fine. He would never tell you. He was very, he loved to be alone in his room. And that's a sign, really, when people start withdrawing from you and they start cutting those connections from you, and you ask them, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, everything's fine. But you can clearly see, and you can clearly, and you intuitively know something's not right here, right? So we felt that way, but we never thought that he would take his life. I honestly thought he's going to snap out of this. He's going to meet somebody. He's going to have kids. I'll have nieces and nephews. He's going to get a great job, like things like that. And that never happened. But if he would have just said one word to us, I would have dropped everything, flown to Miami. My parents would have, but he didn't give us that opportunity. And I think, honestly, he'd already made his mind up that he was going to do this. And maybe he flew there with the intention of doing it. We don't know. But somehow he got his gun. He was on a flight, and somehow he got his gun transported to Miami. Because I know you have to like have it in a box and all this stuff and tell them that you have a weapon on board. So he got it there. He stayed in a hotel for a couple days, and then the night before, it was a Friday, he had owed money to the hotel, and he's like, I don't have the money, like, whatever, can you cut me a break, whatever. And they're like, no, we can't. And he's like, you know what, fine. He actually had an outburst with the receptionist, who was a guy, and he said, fine, just keep all my stuff, I don't care, and walked out. And he left his iPad, his suitcase, everything, but he took his gun. He went somewhere for 24 hours. We don't know where he went. We don't know if he was sleeping on a bench somewhere, or if he was at bars, or what he was. I don't think he was at bars, because we got toxicology back and he didn't have alcohol in his system. But we don't know what happened. I do know that he did run out of money, and he had these extra stresses on him of losing his job, not living at my parents' house anymore, just things like that. So what bothers me the most about all of this is that I don't know his thinking process. And that is really hard to accept, because for me, I go back and say, oh, these were signs. I should have known, like, I should have pushed. That's a huge one for me. Like, I really wish that I would have dug in. Instead of saying, are you okay? I would have been like, I notice you're not okay. Like, explain to me what I can do to help you, and just really getting it out of him. I really regret that, because I feel like that was a missed opportunity for us to be able to connect the dots and really get him the help that he needed, therapy, medicine, whatever. And we didn't get that opportunity, but I do genuinely think that he went there planning to do it. There was a week before he did it that I could just sense, I'm pretty intuitive, and I could just sense something was wrong with him. So I texted him and I was like, hey, I know you're in a hard spot right now. I just wanted to tell you that I love you. Just, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Keep pushing. I believe in you. And then I was like, that's all. Because he was like, if you ever showed him affection, he was very like, thanks, and then just kind of pushed it away. It was a very odd thing. And also a couple months before he did it, he was at my house and somehow suicide came up. And I was like, you would never commit suicide, right? And he's like, no, never. That's stupid. They say that a lot of people that are struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression, things like that, they will say that because they don't want other people to see them vulnerable. They don't want to share that. A lot of people that are suicidal plan it out. They think, okay, I'm going to do it this way. Even I might do it on this day. This is what I'm going to write in my suicide letter, things like that. And that's what I've heard a lot ever since this happened. I've heard stories from a lot of people because I've been posting about it. I've just been talking about it a lot. And I've gotten endless messages from people on Facebook saying, thank you for sharing your story. I've been struggling with this, or my relative has been struggling with this. And now I'm really going to push to figure out what's going on, or I'm going to go see a therapist and get on medication. Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that it's genetics and it's our situation as a society. We really compare ourselves to people on Facebook, to people on Instagram, where it's not real, like they set these high standards that you're never going to be able to achieve. And it just makes you feel even worse about yourself. But I am a huge advocate for medication if you need it, because there usually is a chemical imbalance in your brain. Something in your brain is not operating at a normal level. And you have to fix those chemical imbalances and get you back. The reason why I know this is because there have been a few times in my life where I've been in a dark place and I've been suicidal myself, but I know what good feels like. I've felt amazing before. So that's when I know, okay, I need to go get help. I need to get back on medication. I need to sort this out. And I always go and get help. And immediately it's within a week, I just feel better. And then a few weeks later, you feel so much better. You feel a lot more balanced. So after this happened, I ended up going back on medication. And it did help. I was at the point where I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I cried all day. I had no interest in my company. I didn't want to see my friends, things like that. And there are a lot of outside triggers for this. So you really have to try to encourage yourself, get a positive mindset, things like that, because I really think that my brother would have been saved had he opened up a little bit. So it is hard to be vulnerable with people. It's so hard, especially to say, I'm suicidal. I need help. I'm having these dark thoughts. And I really want to encourage people that are that way, or maybe sense that a friend or a relative is that way, to just say something. Just bring it up, open that door to let them explain. And if they don't, and they keep pushing you away, keep asking, keep digging in, keep checking on them. Don't let them go for periods of time where you don't check in on them, because you want those people need to know that you're there and that you love them, because that could save them, just knowing, okay, they love me. This is what would happen if I did this. And I think a big reason why my brother didn't respond to that, he'd never responded to my text message. And I think the reason why is because he had already made up his mind that he was going to do this. And if he would have engaged with me, he knows that would have made it harder on me to accept what he did. So he just ghosted me, said nothing, didn't hear back from him. And then I had texted him the day that he did this. We didn't find out until, so he did it on a Saturday. We didn't find out till Monday because of Mother's Day. They didn't want to let us know and ruin my mom's Mother's Day. So they let us know on a Monday, and they couldn't identify him. They had to run his fingerprints because he had his cell phone, his wallet and the gun, the holster neatly laid out in a line. And he took all of his credit cards out of his wallet. He took his identification out of his wallet. He had a card in there that didn't say his name on it. It was just a gift card. So I think he didn't want to be identified. I think that's why he went to a roof. I think that my dad and I went to visit where he did this in Miami last year for closure. We left flowers, we left a little plaque, and I wanted to be in the spot where he did it. The detective came with us and said he did it right there. And I wanted to sit there and feel maybe what he felt. And it was between two big ACs on the roof and a huge wall right in front of you. And I so got this feeling of he was super vulnerable. He didn't want anybody to see him. He didn't want anybody to know that he was up there. He just wanted to go quietly. And he had racked the gun 3 times, 3 bullets. And then it was the bullet. He put it to his head and he pulled the trigger. And then after that, the gun had jammed. And I think to myself, if only that gun would have jammed when he tried, maybe he would have second guessed this. Maybe he would have put the gun down and thought, maybe this isn't right. This isn't right. So it's been a lot to process still almost 2 years later. I think about him daily. I think about how I could have prevented this. It's just been really hard to just come to terms with it. So,
we always second guess ourselves 100% of the time. And even when my dog died, I second guessed myself, right? But then when you have the fact that this is completely unexpected, completely untimely, and then you feel like you should have seen, you should have noticed, you should have asked more. You did ask, by the way. You did. He just didn't respond to you. Yeah. You knew instinctively that something wasn't right. But it sounds to me like it did go back even into his youth, because, well, really, in my opinion, being somebody who's struggled with substance abuse, I feel like and depression, I feel like that's a sign, like struggling. And even if you get clean, if you are not dealing with the depression, then you're at risk. You're vulnerable, like you said, right? And I love the fact, because I know who you are. Your company is MacRae Naturals. You are about natural ways of taking care of things. But when the fire is hot, you have to put the fire out, and you cannot wait. Sometimes you can't wait. You can't wait for natural things always. And I'm a huge advocate. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about nutrition and the impacts of that on depression, anxiety, and these subjects. I'm a huge advocate of that, but I'm also a huge advocate if there's a fire, you've got to put the fire out. 100%. So, and so many people don't get help and they don't get on medication. They won't. I mean, I've heard this. The story is so familiar. You must know that too now, that it seems to be the way that it is. So knowing that it's very, very common for people who do take their lives to not reach out, not connect, not share, plan for, long times in advance often. Do you find yourself to a place now, or do you think you may find yourself to a place where you can understand that this was just his decision?
Yeah. And that's what I'm working through in counseling, because I've gotten better, but I was in such a place of like, what could I have done? And I can't tell you how many times I've run the situation through my head. I was obsessive over it. I even, when talking to the detective, I needed that mental picture of what he went through, what the steps were leading up to it. I even asked what position he was laying in when he did it. Was he standing? Was he sitting? Did he have his hat on? By the way, he wiped his phone, did a factory reset on it before he did this. He clearly wanted to just go out like nobody knows why, nobody knows what happened.
He didn't want to put y'all through it.
Yeah, and he didn't leave a note either. And for months, we couldn't find his belongings. We didn't know what hotel he was in. We had no clue until we had to get, I guess it's an affidavit or whatever my dad got from the court, where he could access this stuff and look through his bank account and things like that. So we finally figured it out months later. I was calling at least 30 hotels in Miami before we knew, going, do you know my brother? Did he stay there? Like, this is what happened. Most of them looked his name up and were like, no, I'm so sorry, he didn't stay here. Some of them were like, I can't give you that information. But He ended up being in a hotel, left his stuff there, and they kept it, luckily, because I wanted to see, what did he have? Did he have journals? Like, what was in there? I just needed to know the picture. Like, what in the world was he doing? How did he feel? How did he die? We'll never know the trigger, because I believe it was on his phone, but he wiped that, and he was a very private person. So, but to answer your question, I have been working on getting to a place where I'm not, what could I have done? How did this happen? How could I have prevented it? But more of like, it is his decision, and focusing. The one thing that really helps me is focusing on where he is. I'm a Christian. I believe he's in heaven. I believe that he's at peace now. He's no longer suffering. I know that he's experiencing intense joy and love like he never felt here. And that's one of the things that gets me through when I think about what we lost. And you really have to get in that mind frame, losing somebody to suicide, of like, okay, he's at peace. This was his decision. I couldn't have prevented him from it. I think he had already talked himself into it. And just working to get that to that place of trauma, of thinking about it, obsessively thinking about it, but to the place where accepting it. And grief is a roller coaster. I went periods of weeks where I'm like, oh, I'm okay. And then I just drop and I just think about him, or I see his hat, or I go into his room at my parents' house that smells like him. He loved cologne. So he had so many different colognes. I get to, like, I even passed people in HEB that had that specific cologne. I didn't know what it was, but I'm like, oh, my brother, that smells like him. So for me, scent has been a huge thing. I took some of his shirts and his hat, and I still smell them. And I think for me, I know my counselor's like that, you shouldn't really be doing that because it's a trigger to you. But for me, it's remembering him as he was here, and his scent, and how he smelled, and the shirts he wore, the hats he wore that he loved, things like that. But I think eventually I will get to a place where it's like, okay, I'm moving through this. It's been a while. I'm accepting it. But for me, it's just still been too soon. It's been almost 2 years. It's still fresh, and just moving on with my life is a hard thing to do because it is still fresh. And I want to tell him about my boys. He loved my kids. And I always think like, oh, he would have loved to see CJ play soccer. He's so good. Or Caden play baseball. He's the best on his team. And my brother loves sports. And I just think, oh, he'd be so proud. Or if I see a TikTok video that has me dying laughing, like, oh, I wish I could send this to him, So there's those moments, but just focusing on where he is. And I believe like he is around me, like his spirit's around me. And he's there to support me. And I don't believe like that he's gone. I still believe I have his energy around me and he's checking up on us. So I do think about that a lot, but in the end, I have to get to that point where I can't accept it. I lost my best friend at 16. I've been through a lot of losses and it was so fresh for so long, but I have gotten to the point where it's like, instead of crying, I just think of the good times and the memories, and I'm excited and hopeful that I'll get to that point with my brother. But this has just been a lot more heavy because I grew up with him, for 33 years. I was around him, 31 really, because like I'm 31 now, but I was around him. We have so many memories together with us as a family. And today we're going to celebrate him by going out to lunch, me and my mom and my dad, at his favorite restaurant. So we just try to remember him on his birthday and just make this day about him and just remembering him and honoring him in that way instead of just thinking about what we've lost.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. So, and we had Peggy on yesterday, who's a grief coach, and she talked about several different things about how different people deal with grief. But I think that being able to find a way to continue to keep them alive like that is a big part of being able to move forward.
Yeah.
Never move on, but move forward. And so I think it's beautiful that you do that. I want to ask you a question about memorializing, but before I do, I just wanted to check in on the family implications. And by that, I mean, I know that you've struggled with depression and anxiety and things like that in your life. Did this make you guys take a look at that for yourselves a little bit more deeply as a family or individually to see, maybe this is here, maybe this is something we need to address.
100%. I mean, I've always been the one in my family that's like, this isn't normal. I know what I'm feeling is not normal, and I look for the answer. So I've been to just doctors before. They go, oh, you have postpartum depression or whatever. But it's deeper than that. And so I went to this amazing psychiatrist a few months ago because I just knew I needed to get help. And I was on a call with her maybe 2 hours, and she dissected my family, my emotions, how even my kids, how my brother was, how did he act like? Do you see similar things within your family? And we did come down to the root cause of it being bipolar. So I'm on medicine for that. And then I also have PTSD for some of the traumas that I've had in the past. So just finding that balance of the right medication and having an actual diagnosis is so much better than just wondering what's wrong with me. And I know it comes from my mom's side of the family, and maybe from my dad's side a little bit too. His grandfather took his life. And then on my mom's side, I don't think they've had suicides, but I know my mom and I are very close in the way that we act and how we feel, like people pleasers and things like that. We're very similar in that way. So I know she has it too, but she's on different medication, and I'm trying to get her to go to the psychiatrist I go to because she still feels really down. Like she used to be so joyful and laugh all the time, but since this has happened, it's her baby. It was her firstborn child. I cannot even imagine as a mother what she went through. And she's just like, I did everything for him. Where did I go wrong? We did so much. And she's still in that place, which is really hard for me to see too. But I feel like I'm the worst in my family because I'm like very vocal about it, and I'm just open about it, versus my parents are more in the generation of like, we're going to keep it to ourselves. My dad is totally fine. He's a firm believer and a huge Christian. And there was a couple months there where he wasn't, but he got to the point where he's like, I feel resolved now. I know he's in a good place. I've seen where he did it. We got his stuff back. We tied up loose ends, and my dad's okay. My mom's not 100%. She's getting better, but I can still see she's still struggling with it, but not anything like me. I feel like I was the one Stephen was really close to and really open with. And if anybody should have known, it should have been me. So yeah, the family really, we really had to she really dissected everything and got down to the root cause of it. So I'm a huge advocate for a psychiatrist. And she also like talks to you about how you're feeling and what you can do to help yourself. So yeah, it's definitely a genetics thing.
Definitely is. And I'm so grateful that you guys are getting the help that you need, because it's just so important.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you've decided to memorialize your brother.
So I own a jewelry wellness company, and we sell teething necklaces, the amber stuff that is great for pain relief. But I also sell gemstones, which I don't use them for spiritual things like that. I'm more of a physical and emotional type of believer in gemstones. It works. I'm a believer in energy. It works with your energy field, your vibration. Everything has a vibration. Everything on earth has a vibration. So that's essentially what these crystals do. So I actually made a bracelet in honor of my brother, and I designed this thinking of him and what support he would have needed in the time in the time he was struggling through this. And so I have this bracelet. It was called Stephen's Protection. You might not be able to see it well. It's got kyanite in the center, but it's really protective. It's all the protective stones. It's all the stones that support negative thoughts, that support emotional balance, that support communication, things like that. And it's funny because he loved black and his favorite color was blue, and it coincidentally turned out to be black and blue.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's on my website, and we donate a portion of it to my brother's memorial fund. That is we have National Alliance of Mental Illness. And then we also have the suicide awareness. So we're donating to both of those in his memorial fund in his honor. And I'm getting to the point with my business where I already support stay-at-home moms to make the jewelry, because that's how I was when I started it. So that's been a goal of mine and a huge mission of mine. But also, since this happened, a huge mission and calling to me is mental health. It is suicide awareness. It is people struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar, all of it. And I really, I want to focus on this coming year of doing a percentage of all of my profit for the whole year and making it a much bigger thing to support than just this bracelet alone, you know? So that's the direction I'm heading in, because if anything, with my brother, I don't want him to have died in vain. I want to help somebody with his story. If it helps one person, it's done its job. I want it to speak to people that are feeling this way and encourage them to get help. And don't put your family through this, because sometimes you don't think about that, or you think they'd be better off without me. That's not the case. And I know my brother felt that way. We are traumatized by this happening. And we all just were like so dumbfounded that he did this and how he did it. And it's just been really traumatic. So as a family, you just ask so many questions. You feel so guilty. And I always think to myself, man, I wish he would have gone in a car accident, because that would have not been his choice. It would have been a way of him to pass it's still traumatic, but it's not to the point of like, this was his decision to leave us. We should have seen the signs. We could have helped in this way. And that's really the hardest part of it, is just knowing that there hopefully, like, there should have been an opening for us to intervene. So that's really been a hard part of accepting it.
So I love what you're doing to memorialize your brother. I'm fascinated that the stones happen to be black and blue, but I love the ones that you picked and why you picked them. It sounds like it would be good for a lot of us. I think I need one of those. I also know that you have 3 other pieces of jewelry that support in these areas. You want to share what those are?
Yeah, so we do have a bipolar design. We have recently cleaned our website up and we are cleaning out. So we have them on discount on our clearance page, but we have a bipolar design. What I did was I had a bunch of different bracelets that kind of overlapped. And so we retired the ones that had something else that were more popular. So I do have a bracelet that's for positivity, anxiety, and peace. And it's got this crystal called lepidolite in it. And this has a natural form of lithium, which are found in some mood stabilizers. So it's great for people with bipolar. It's great for finding that inner peace. It's really great for anxiety. And it's one of our best sellers. And it's on the homepage as well under best sellers. So that's a really good one. The suicide awareness one, I made notes too. The self-love, anger, and peace is a good one, because a lot of times when you have bipolar, you have rage and outbursts. My brother definitely did. And you're either a volcano with it, where you just erupt and it keeps going, or you're a lightning bolt where you just lash out one time and then you feel guilty. And I saw this all the time in my brother. And it would be the anger, regret, where then you feel bad about it. And so I just have these crystals that are known to support that. And we combine that in one bracelet. And so we have a bunch of those pieces on the website that can help support mental health.
All right, awesome. So everybody go to MacRae, it's macraenaturals.com. Right?
Yeah, MACRAE naturals.com.
Yeah, and I'll post it in the comments to make sure everybody has it too. So, and you can also connect with MacRae Naturals through Facebook. They've got amazing Facebook communities. So definitely where people can support each other and even share about these things. These are important topics.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap it up saying one more thing, and then you say whatever your last thoughts are. The thing that always occurs to me, I know that if you die from lung cancer and you smoke, people always seem to blame you. Mm-hmm. When you die of suicide, I feel like there's that kind of thing going on. Like, you know, you left your family like this. I've even heard people call it really selfish.
Yeah.
But the first thing I think of is how much pain must somebody have been in to actually take their life? I have to think it's pretty immense.
Yeah. And that's what's haunting to me is you do get to a point, because I've been there, and I've been there since my 20s. There's been multiple times where I'm just like, I don't want to live anymore. This is too hard. I just feel that negative energy around me. And you feel like you can't breathe, and you're just suffocated by it, and you see no way out. You're in this deep, dark hole, and you can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. You get to a place where you just are like, I can't do this anymore. I'm suffering. I'm useless. I've done this and this, and you just rack your brain on all the things that you've done wrong in your life and how it'll be easier if you're just not there. And it's such a deep, dark place. And that's why I really want to speak about my own struggles and my brother's struggles, because I know he was in that place. He didn't have anything going for him. He didn't have a girlfriend. He didn't have kids. He had lost his job. He had just left my parents' house with no money. He was in a dark place, and I think that's what triggered it. And he just was helpless. He felt really helpless. So I just want to encourage people, if you have any of these feelings, please reach out to either a counselor, a psychiatrist, a friend, a relative. Just say, I'm struggling. My mental health is struggling and I need help. You don't even have to elaborate on how you're feeling, because I know that's hard for people, because you're going to scare other people, or sometimes people are like, oh, they just want attention, which is the worst thing you can do. Anytime somebody says, I'm suicidal or I'm having these dark thoughts, you can never pass that off as, oh, they want attention. You have to 100% of the time take them seriously and try to intervene as much as you can. Try to connect the dots, even if it's far as researching a counselor for them, researching a psychiatrist, because I got to the point where I was so just unmotivated, and I was such a dark place that even thinking about finding a counselor or a psychiatrist was like so much work to me. And that's what kept me from doing it. I don't want to go do this.
Yeah.
I call 15 of them, so that's why if anybody is local to Spring or Houston, please reach out to me. I've got two amazing people that support me and have really changed my life and really encouraged me since this happened. But feeling like this, it's not normal. You've got to get help.
Right.
You can't continue to suffer in silence.
Beautiful. Well, again, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and so open. I know you're going to help a lot of people. I love your bracelet for in your memorialization of your brother. If you guys know anybody or could benefit from that bracelet, please reach out and grab one as soon as you can, because I think what she's doing with these is beautiful. Now, think of this, guys. 45% of adults are suffering with mental illness, 66% serious mental illness. 51% of our youth have some form of mental health condition. People are alone and they're suffering. So one of the things that I think you could do is share this message, share this video. It will come up on my YouTube channel. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You will get notified when it's released, so you can actually take the link and share it and send it out. These people aren't talking to people. They're not sharing. So we have to work together to try to get this message out to as many people as possible. So I encourage you, please comment, share, send. If you think somebody's suffering, send it. What have you got to lose? Maybe you can help them. So again, thank you. Again, tomorrow I'm going to be speaking from a position as a holistic nutrition and wellness coach, and my own struggles with depression and dealing with it with sugar and carbohydrates and alcohol and the things like that, and how they affect you and make it worse, and how you can actually help yourself by reversing some things in those areas. So that's for me tomorrow. Then we have a beautiful young gal who shared in the past on postpartum depression, severe postpartum depression. And that's another thing, we don't talk about it, right? So thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you again, Kimberly, and we'll see you next time.